Welcome to the debate. When toxicologists manufacture antivenom, the process is, well, it's inherently paradoxical.
Right, because you literally need the poison to make the cure.
Exactly. To create the cure that actually saves a victim's life, you first have to extract the exact same lethal venom from, the fangs of the snake. It requires looking incredibly closely at a deadly, destructive force, identifying it perfectly, and then using its own properties to neutralize it.
Which is a brilliant methodology.
It really is. And today, we are applying that exact same methodology to a profoundly complex human trait, which is cunning. We are talking about that calculating shrewdness. Specifically, we mean individuals who are quick-witted, who read the room purely for self-interest, and who manipulate situations entirely to their own advantage.
Yes, it is a fascinating and frankly a pretty disturbing psychological profile to unpack because it's not just about intelligence, right? It's about intelligence completely stripped of empathy.
I mean, that hits the nail on the head. And the specific question we are exploring today centers on how we should fundamentally use our source material to understand this trait. We are looking at ancient archetypes, specifically the biblical metaphor of the Genesis serpent, and asking a really core question.
The big divide.
Right. Is this material primarily a sociological diagnostic tool, meant to help us externally identify and, condemn manipulative predators in our communities? Or is it fundamentally an internal, psychological mirror, designed to expose the innate capacity for self-serving deception within ourselves?
Two very different ways to read the text.
Absolutely. I will be arguing that this material provides a vital external taxonomy of social predators, basically giving us a framework to identify bad actors.
And I will be taking the position that the material ultimately points toward deep internal introspection, demanding that we recognize the serpent inside ourselves.
So let's get right into the foundational positions here. When I read the source material, what strikes me most forcefully is that it describes an undeniable, observable social reality.
Okay.
The text provides incredibly specific definitions of a certain type of person that, frankly, we all interact with. We are talking about people who flatter superiors with calculated precision, who exploit the good nature of naive colleagues, and who view every single human relationship merely as a transaction.
A means to an end.
Right. And the biblical archetype of the serpent, which is described right from the start in Genesis 3, as the most crafty of all creatures, is perfectly deployed here to categorize these specific external actors.
Crafty meaning they know exactly how to find the weak point in a system or a person, right?
Exactly. They map the vulnerabilities. And the source points out that historical figures in the text, like Jesus and John the Baptist, they didn't use this as some, abstract philosophical metaphor for the human condition. They literally called out specific, identifiable groups, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, as a brood of vipers.
Yeah, the religious elite.
Right, and just for context, these were essentially the moral and cultural elite of their day. They were the people everyone trusted implicitly. So calling them a brood of vipers wasn't just a generic insult. It was a devastating unmasking of observable hypocrisy. To me, the text is providing us with a vital sociological tool. It gives us the precise language we need to identify those who weaponize deception in the real world so we can actually protect ourselves from them.
Look, I understand the appeal of that reading, and I agree that those behaviors are very real. But focusing entirely on others misses the profound philosophical turn at the end of the source material. The serpent is, at its core, an internal psychological reality.
How so?
Well, if you look closely at the serpent's original deception in the text, the methodology is incredibly telling. The serpent doesn't roar, it doesn't, overpower anyone, it just asks a question. Did God really say?
Right. Sowing doubt.
Exactly. It mixes truth with lies just enough to stimulate the human desire to be like God, to be the ultimate arbiter of our own reality. That is not just the tactic of a sociopath in the boardroom. That is the universal voice of human rationalization.
Ah, so you're saying it's the mechanism of our own internal excuses.
Precisely. It is the voice in our own heads when we justify cutting a corner, or telling a white lie to save face, or subtly shifting blame to a coworker because we feel threatened. The material culminates in a devastatingly personal question. What do I do about the traits of the serpent inside me? That pivot proves that the entire framework is a mirror. If we simply externalize the blame and use this text as a field guide for spotting bad people out in the world, it completely blinds us to our own inner cunning.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. If we make the serpent purely an internal psychological mechanism, if we just say, well, we all have a little snake inside us, we risk stripping the text of its immense practical utility.
You think we lose the defense mechanism?
I do. Society specifically isolates cunning as one of the worst possible reputations a person can have. The material explicitly highlights this, noting that being seen as calculating and manipulative is considered worse than almost any other professional or personal failing. I mean, it is heavily contrasted with being kind, diligent, and straightforward.
Sure, no one wants to be known as the office Machiavelli.
Right, but there is a reason for that intense societal immune response. Recognizing these snakes in a corporate or social world is a necessary defense mechanism. Human communities run on a currency of reciprocal trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you have a calculating person who, say, feigns vulnerability just to extract sensitive information from you, and then weaponizes that information in a meeting to steal your credit, they don't just hurt you. They introduce friction into the whole network.
They break the trust ecosystem.
Exactly. We need concrete categories to describe people who are actively malignant, who view empathy not as a virtue, but as a weakness to be exploded. If we dilute the concept of the serpent into a universal human flaw, we effectively disarm the innocent. We lose the ability to draw a hard line and protect people from actual objective exploiters who do catastrophic damage to our communities.
I come at it from a different way. The serpent's offspring described in the material is a lineage of behavior, not a fixed genetic class of people. The defining trait of the serpent isn't just malice, it is the manipulation of weakness.
Okay.
When we only look outward, when we only scan the room for that corporate sycophant or that selfish friend, we fail to recognize how incredibly easy it is for us to adopt the exact same calculating logic the moment our own interests are threatened.
But wait, isn't there a massive difference in scale and intent here? Like, we all have moments of selfishness. Sure, I might spin a story to make myself look a little better, but the text is describing a lifestyle of predation. It's talking about people whose default operating system is manipulation.
But is the gap really as wide as we like to think, though? The danger of the external taxonomy you're advocating for is that it creates a very convenient us versus them dichotomy.
What?
We are the innocent sheep. They are the cunning vipers, right? But human nature is vastly more complicated. In fact, the very act of categorically condemning others can itself be a cunning maneuver to elevate our own social standing and hide our flaws.
That's a bit of a paradox, but I see your point.
Right? The text forces us to ask deeply uncomfortable questions. When I flatter my boss, am I just being polite or am I the serpent? When I withhold a crucial piece of information from a peer to gain a slight edge, am I just being strategic or am I actively participating in the venomous behavior the text condemns? The universalizing aspect isn't meant to excuse the genuine sociopath. It's meant to shatter the illusion of our own inherent innocence.
But this illusion of innocence you're talking about, it completely shatters when we look at how these people operate in groups. The text doesn't just call them snakes. It merges metaphors.
The sheep's clothing.
Right. It brings in Matthew 7:15, which warns of wolves in sheep's clothing, and synthesizes it with the Genesis serpent motif to create this concept of the serpent in sheep's clothing. Now, to me, this highlights that the greatest danger is the literal external hypocrite residing within a community. We are talking about someone who feigns piety, innocence, and absolute alignment with the group's moral code, specifically to gain trust, only to exploit it.
The classic con artist dynamic.
The text provides a defense against this. It warns that these people must be identified by their fruits. And what are fruits? They are the physical, tangible impact of a person's actions over time. Because a cunning person's words and their actions are completely misaligned.
Yeah, the talk doesn't match the walk.
Exactly. They might say all the right things about teamwork and synergy, but their fruits are a trail of burned bridges, demoralized colleagues, and stolen credit. This requires external vigilance. You have to watch what people do, not what they say. That is an outward-facing mandate. It's a diagnostic test for bad actors.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that the serpent in sheep's clothing is actually the ultimate description of human cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, yes, it absolutely applies to the con artist. But on a much deeper level, the hypocrisy the text points to isn't just a sociopath tricking a community. It is the agonizing gap between our own stated morals and our secret, calculating thoughts.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I'm grasping this fully. Are you suggesting that the sheep's clothing isn't just a manipulative disguise we put on to fool our coworkers, but a psychological lie we tell ourselves?
Exactly that. We genuinely believe we are the sheep. The human ego has a brilliant immune system. We construct these elaborate protective narratives about our own goodness, our own victimization, our own pure intentions.
Oh, wow. So we justify it internally first?
Right. We say, I'm not being manipulative, I'm just being pragmatic. Or, I didn't lie, I just managed the flow of information. Meanwhile, beneath that wool, our underlying motivations are often highly calculating, deeply self-serving, and incredibly manipulative.
So the disguise works on the wearer first.
It has to. Otherwise, the dissonance would be unbearable. The true tension in this material isn't community unmasking a villain. It is a person looking down at their own hands and realizing their internal duality. When Jesus called out the Pharisees, the profound tragedy wasn't just that they were tricking the public. The tragedy was that they had successfully tricked themselves.
Right, they thought they were the heroes of the story.
They genuinely thought they were serving God, but their fruits were a rigid, manipulative system of control that crushed vulnerable people. They were completely blind to the serpent within their own theology. If we only use this text to play detective in our social circles, we never have to face the terrifying dissonance in our own minds.
Okay, I hear that, but I'm still struggling with that line of reasoning because it feels like it minimizes the devastation caused by those who consciously choose to exploit others.
I don't think it minimizes it, but
Well, when the text says, "By their fruits you will know them," it points to a measurable trail of damage left in the physical world. Let's look at the ultimate fate of this archetype, the meaning of the curse, because I think this perfectly illustrates my point about the external reality of cunning. The divine curse placed upon the serpent in Genesis to crawl on its belly and eat dust for all the days of its life is incredibly vivid imagery.
It is. It's one of the most famous curses in literature.
Right. And in the context of this discussion, I argue this symbolizes the inevitable isolation, self-destruction, and social ruin of calculating individuals who use others. The mechanics of social trust guarantee this. When you treat people as stepping stones, when you view every interaction as a chess match to be won, eventually the community figures it out.
You think it always catches up to them?
Yes, the network's immune system kicks in. Your reputation catches up with you. The eating of dust is the ultimate social consequence. Dust is the residue of broken things. It offers absolutely no nourishment. It represents the loss of all genuine human connection. The message of the text is clear and external. These social predators will ultimately face a crawling downfall. The system corrects itself by expelling them.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
You are assuming that cunning always leads to visible social ruin. But if we are honest about the mechanics of the real world, the calculating sycophant very often gets the promotion.
Unfairly, yes.
The manipulator often retains power. Sometimes they become CEOs, sometimes they become politicians. If the curse of the serpent relies on external social justice, on the community always figuring it out and expelling the bad actor, then the text is hopelessly naive.
But eventually, over a long enough timeline, doesn't the house of cards collapse?
Not always materially, but the text isn't naive because it's not talking about material success. The curse of eating dust represents the spiritual degradation we experience when we give in to our own inner serpent.
So you are saying they experience this degradation even if they succeed materially? Even if they win the game?
Precisely. Think about your own metaphor of the chess match. When you view every relationship as a chess match, you might win the game, but you lose your humanity. That's what eating dust actually means. You can sit in the corner office, surrounded with wealth and status, and still be crawling on your belly.
Because the connections are fake?
Yes. The curse isn't about losing your job or your friends. It's about the fact that when you live a life of cunning, you make genuine connection impossible. You can no longer experience grace or unconditional love or genuine vulnerability because you view everyone as a potential threat or a potential tool.
Because you assume everyone else is playing the same manipulative game you are.
Exactly. You are consuming power and status, but because you've walled off your vulnerability, none of it actually nourishes you. You're starving in the corner office. You are consuming dust, something entirely devoid of life, and this connects directly to the material's final note of hope.
The resolution part.
Right. The resolution of this text isn't watching someone else fall from grace and feeling vindicated. The resolution is the internal victory where, as the material puts it, the good and true side will ultimately win over our own calculating nature. It is the hard-fought, moment-by-moment internal battle to build genuine, honest relationships despite our ego's instinct to manipulate and control.
So the true defeat of the serpent isn't exposing the liar in the room. It's choosing not to lie yourself when it would be advantageous to do so. It's refusing to play the game even when it costs you.
Yes. It's the realization that the venom is in our own bloodstream, and the only way to neutralize it is through rigorous, painful self-honesty.
This is a remarkable place to pause and summarize our positions in light of this incredibly deep discussion. I still firmly hold that the primary utility of the serpent archetype is as an essential diagnostic tool. The detailed descriptions of cunning, the mixing of truth and lies, the feigning of innocence, the calculated exploitation of vulnerability, these are observable behaviors that we must learn to identify.
Right.
To protect the integrity of any community, whether it's a workplace, a family, or a society, we must be vigilant against hypocritical predators. The brood of vipers is a real, external threat, and treating the text as a taxonomy allows us to name that threat and resist it.
And I maintain that treating the text merely as a sociological tool fundamentally shortchanges its philosophical depth. The text's greatest value is as a psychological mirror demanding deep introspection. The serpent's logic, rationalizing selfishness, manipulating truth to justify desire, is the default operating system of the human ego.
The inner snake?
Exactly. A most dangerous serpent in sheep's clothing isn't the colleague across the desk. It is our own self-serving nature, masked by our own self-righteousness. Confronting that inner conflict is the only true path to genuine, honest relationships.
Well, while we clearly disagree on the primary application of these ancient archetypes, I think we have reached a profound point of convergence today. We both entirely agree on the nature of the craftiness described in the material, the act of mixing truth with lies, and the deliberate exploitation of the vulnerabilities of others is fundamentally destructive.
Completely destructive. Whether it ruins your external reputation and gets you expelled from the community, or it hollows out your internal soul while you sit at the top of the corporate ladder, the end result is exactly the same: isolation.
The dust.
The metaphorical eating of dust. A life devoid of true sustenance and connection.
Exactly, and perhaps reflecting on the value of holding both perspectives simultaneously is where the real wisdom lies. Understanding human cunning requires a dual vision. We absolutely need the external vigilance to protect ourselves from exploitation, but we equally need the intellectual humility to confront our own capacity for deception.
I couldn't agree more. If you only look outward, you become a self-righteous hypocrite, blind to your own flaws. If you only look inward, you might become a defenseless victim, easily manipulated by others. The psychological depths of these archetypes offer so much more for us to explore in this material.
They really do. And as always, we will end today without declaring a definitive winner. leaving you, the listener, to weigh the evidence. Which brings us back to our anti-venom. The vial is in your hands, but the question remains, to cure the toxicity in your life, do you need to look outward to find the serpent that bit you, or do you need to look inward and realize you've been carrying the fangs all along?